In this episode of the Extended Forecast, I sit down with Jamie Arnold, Chief Meteorologist at WMBF in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with more than 2 decades of experience. Arnold has spent his entire career in the Carolinas, bouncing around North Carolina before settling at the coast of South Carolina. Hurricane Hugo sparked his love for weather, and he's covered his share in his career. We talk about how the industry has changed over the past 2 decades, seeing the region's first snowfall this past winter in years, and how an afternoon out turned into covering a major wildfire this past March. We also talk about Arnold's love for painting and how he gets inspiration for each piece. We cover so much in this in-depth interview. Join us for the upbeat conversation. Thank you, Jamie, so much for taking the time to talk to me today. As you alluded to, it's very hot out there, seeing middle to upper 90s in most spots. Do you feel like most people that are kind of new here expected it to get this hot down towards the coast?
There's always a mix. Most people, especially around here, and it's probably the same there. I think they came from New York or northern Ohio or somewhere way up in the upstate of New York, and they're like, yeah, we don't care how hot it is. At least we don't have to shovel snow every winter. So, they don't mind. But some of them I definitely think are kind of shocked at like, wow, yeah, it does get really hot and humid here.
Yeah, that humidity is no joke, too, talking about not just temperatures in the middle to upper 90s, but feels like values 100, 105, 110 in some spots. And that's obviously dangerous heat for anywhere.
Yeah, it is. In fact, I've been sort of keeping up with the highest numbers I could find today. And just between you and I, up there in Little River so far, the peak is coming in at 111
Hmm.
for the highest heat index here so far today. Of course, I kind of have a feeling we'll probably outdo those numbers probably a little bit later in the summer.
And it is kind of early in the summer to be seeing temperatures this high. Obviously, it can happen, June, July, and August. What do people, what are you hearing from people as far as like what they are feeling and how they're handling the heat so far?
It's it seems like this happens every year. Everybody's like, man, it just instantly turned into summer. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, I mean, I kind of get it this year. It was dry and then we had a bunch of rain for a couple of weeks and then it's like this switch flipped and it was hot. But everybody's just kind of taking it in stride and slowing down a little bit. The beaches are packed. I've been watching the sky cams down here in the Grand Strand today, and that is definitely a popular place. And I don't think anybody vacationing here, minds the heat. They're down at the pool, they're down at the beach, and they're living it up.
Yeah, they plan to head to the beach anyway, so it's no problem for them. They can cool off in the water, just kind of get some shade down there.
Yeah, one thing I did notice though is, boy, our water temperatures. I hadn't checked you guys up there, but here at Springmaid Pier down in Myrtle Beach, we've jumped all the way up to 86
Wow.
just in the past couple of days with the heat we've had since last week. So that's pretty impressive. That's a big jump.
Yeah, I think Riceville Beach last check was about 82 or 83, so we're warming slowly up too.
Yeah, it's we'll see what that means for later in the season.
Yeah, not a good sign when water temperatures are already this warm this early in the season.
Yeah, a little bit worrisome. So we'll see how things pan out. Hopefully, it's just nice and warm for a swim and nothing else lingering out there later this summer.
And you kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago about the fact that, people moving out of the Northeast deal with snow up there, but we actually got snow down here earlier this winter. Was that kind of something else that you heard a lot about from people about they didn't necessarily expect to see that this far down south?
Yeah, I think everybody was excited about it. I'm sure it's the same for you up there, but you guys have actually had some snow up there, even when we kind of missed it back in 2018. We sort of missed the snow then, but yeah, I think people were surprised, one, that it actually snowed and
Mhm.
snowed a lot. We ended up with officially 5.5 inches here in Myrtle Beach. But I think what really got most people, even the long timers around here, is the fact that we had snow on the ground for a week. Around here, normally, if it snows at night, it's gone by the next afternoon. But with all that cold weather and all that snow, and we also had that sleet that kind of coated it and locked it all in, man, we couldn't get rid of that stuff for a long time. And I think that really shocked a lot of people, and especially the Northerners. When Orange County down here, we don't have a snowplow, so the fact that everything just kind of was shut down for a couple of days, I think was a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most complaints that I heard about was the fact that, yes, we got snow, but the fact that it stuck around for days and days and days. I think we have one plow here, not a lot to really go around. So we still had to go to work, but everybody else enjoyed it and stayed at home and just kind of stayed safe there.
Yeah, and I think that was the bottom line. I think everybody just really loved it because there's nothing as
Mhm.
beautiful as snow on the beach. You know, it's such
Yeah.
a rare treat. I'm a huge snow lover, so just having to work that event, even being tired the next couple of days following it, it was still just it was so fun because it's always just so great to look at, and I don't know, everybody was happy, and the kids finally got a good, decent snow day. So it was one of those more fun weather events that we have to cover. Still tiring, but at least it was kind of a fun tiring.
Yeah, it's always nice when it verifies too, because you don't want to say it's going to snow and then nothing happens. So at least this time we call for snow. It actually did snow, and most people were happy at least.
And that was the interesting thing here. Back in 2018, we had that big coastal snowstorm, and it was kind of like this past one. It was snowing in Charleston, snowed up in Georgetown, and then we had a forecast for 2 to 4 inches here. Was supposed to going up into Wilmington, and it snowed everywhere. That forecast verified everywhere except right here in Myrtle Beach. We got a couple of flurries there at the tail end of the storm, so there were a lot of people that afternoon of the snowstorm a couple months ago that were like, "Yeah, I hope this isn't 2018. Hope this isn't 2018." And I was so happy that it wasn't.
And something else about 2018, obviously back then we got Hurricane Florence
Yeah,
spraying down there too. Hopefully it doesn't turn out to be a repeat, seeing snow again and not a major hurricane, but like an impactful hurricane once again.
yeah, but we're in that season, and you know how it goes. Up there just as well as we do down here. This time every year, you got to be ready. Florence is one that still kind of really rattles people's nerves around here. Obviously it was the flooding. We didn't get any hurricane force winds, but it took 24 hours for the center of Florence to move just through Horry County. And then so we were just locked in with the rain and the tornadoes, and then of course the historic flooding that followed that for weeks and weeks and weeks. Myrtle Beach almost became an island. We were basically cut off because of the flooding from that. So that's one that, yeah, certainly nobody wants to ever see that again. But yeah, we're in that time of the year where we got to be ready and be prepared, and it's hurricane season, and we have our first named storm out there.
We do. Yeah, formed
Yeah,
earlier on today.
yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't turn out to be too impactful of a season, but as you said, necessary to prepare ahead of time just in case something does happen.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now's the time. We always say we preach it, and you guys too. Don't wait until you're in the cone to go stock up on those supplies and get those shutters ready. Go ahead and get it done now while it's nice and quiet. And that way you're not stressed out as the storm's coming in.
And I think what Florence did too was kind of reiterate the idea of don't rely on exact storm strength as far as category goes. Any storm can be impactful because a lot of people I hear, they say, well, if it's not a 3 or 4, I'm going to stay. I was fine last time. I'll be fine this time too. But that's not always the case.
Yeah, it's really not. Florence, almost every hurricane, it seems, sort of proves that example. Um, Most of our past hurricanes in the past couple of years have done that. Hurricane Matthew was barely hanging on as a category 1, but we had almost a category 2, category 3 type of storm surge here in Myrtle Beach, came in just under what we saw from Hurricane Hugo, which is kind of our landmark storm here. Back in 22, we had Hurricane Ian. Again, a category 1 hurricane by the technical definition, but again, brought a huge surge, a lot more damaging surge than one you would normally expect from a category 1. So, yeah, that category thing, you gotta sort of take it with a grain of salt. As far as, especially with storm surge, can do a lot of funky things, especially on the coast of the Carolinas.
And you brought up Hugo. I think Hugo was the last landfalling major hurricane in either of the Carolinas. Or we got what, Fran?
Well, yeah, you guys had
Yeah,
Frank.
but at
Yeah,
least in South Carolina.
yeah.
And it also helped to kind of spark your interest for weather. What was it about Hugo that really helped to drive home that's what you wanted to do for a career?
I was in Charlotte. I was just a youngster in Charlotte at the time of Hugo, and there was a lot of focus. I remember watching the news the night before landfall, and there was obviously a lot of focus on Charleston and Myrtle Beach, but there was very little information or even concern about what would be happening well inland. The forecasting capabilities certainly weren't what we had today. So went to bed thinking it was going to be sort of a gusty, rainy day the next day. But man, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, the house is shaking. Charlotte's, gusting to 100 miles per hour. I ended up being out of school for 2 weeks, out of power for 3 weeks. just really a crippling storm. And I was like, wow, okay. I'd always been into weather leading up to Hugo, but that was kind of what really sealed the deal for me as far as, going into this crazy field.
Yeah, and you were at UNC Charlotte at the time, or was this
Yeah.
before your?
I was I was in junior high school at the time in
Okay,
1989. Yeah, I'm an old guy.
gotcha.
Yeah, so I was in junior high school for Hurricane Hugo. Yeah.
All right, but eventually you did go on to go to UNC Charlotte, and
Yep.
there you study meteorology as well as geography.
Yeah, atmospheric science and geography, and I was still kind of on the fence about if I wanted to go into the broadcast side of things.
Yeah.
So my one of my advisors and favorite professors nudged me along and was like, "All right, well, since you don't really know, why don't you stick around for another 2 years and get your master's degree?" So I did that, stuck around, got my master's degree, and at the same time, I ended up doing an internship at a TV station in Charlotte at the NBC affiliate there in Charlotte. And my mentor there kind of pushed me onto the green screen and said, yeah, just try it, just try it. And she saw something in me and kind of pushed me into it. And here I am 22 years later, still in the business and still on television.
It's funny how life goes. You never know exactly what you're going to do. One little thing can really change the trajectory of where things are going to go.
Yeah, it really does. I always thought I was going to go into more of the research side or maybe even teaching. I really enjoyed teaching when I was in grad school. I taught undergrad the meteorology lab, and I really enjoyed that and really thought hard about going into teaching for a while. Um, but then I guess I got the bug, just getting in front of the green screen and then the excitement of walking into a new studio every day and it's something different and getting to sort of tell the weather story and show your excitement about it. I still love that to this day.
And you also studied, as I mentioned, geography at UNC Charlotte.
Yeah.
What is it about that that you think every meteorologist should know, not just their local DMA geography, but also just kind of geography in the region and in the country in general?
Yeah, geography it goes a lot more than knowing where places are on a map. It's studying different land masses and land types and how those interact with the climate and develop certain weather patterns. And I really enjoy that geography part. And I'm really happy I did it. I'm a map guru also, so I still kind of carry that with me and can, point out little spots on the map and name some neat figures and, pick out a rock formation in the mountains. And, it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and your first foot in the door job after that, I believe, was kind of as a got it written down here. You were also a producer in Charlotte, right?
Yeah, so the mentor that I was with when I was doing my internship, that was at WCNC in Charlotte. The internship came to an end, and I was still in grad school, kind of getting near graduation. And I told her, I said, I will do anything. Like I will come in and sweep the floors. I'll pour your coffee, whatever I need to do, just to kind of keep my foot in the door. And there was nothing at the time, but sure enough, about 5 months later, she called and said, I'm creating a position for you. We're going to call it a weather producer. And so I did that for 2 years. And basically, I did a lot of behind the scenes work. I joke I did a lot of the grunt work that nobody else wanted to do. When it would snow in Charlotte, when I was on that job, I would have to climb up on the roof. And this was back in the day where we had giant satellite dishes. And I would have to sweep the snow off the satellite dishes to keep us on the air. When there was severe weather, this was back in the day where you had to actually type out the information you wanted to show at the bottom of the screen. I was doing things like that, but the whole time, that whole 2 years, I was just being sort of immersed in that studio environment was enough to. I think I learned more from that than I probably have anything. Just those 2 years, and that set me up. And she was like, "All right, it's time for you to start looking for real jobs," and I did, and I broke into the business.
So I believe your first job was in Greenville, North Carolina. What was that like getting your foot in the door there, an actual in front of the camera on TV job?
It was great. I was terrified. I'd kind of been planning for it and thinking about it and practicing in front of the green screen, but it's a whole different ball game when somebody's actually paying you to do it. But it was WITN up in Greenville, North Carolina, and I'll never forget my very first day on the air was an Easter Sunday, and it wasn't a quiet day. We'd had severe weather, and so my very first show on the air was covering severe storms, and it was just craziness. And I think I was white as a ghost the whole time, and took one big breath and let it all out on air. But it was great, and I ended up being there 6.5 years. I like to say that's where I got my practice covering hurricanes,
Hmm.
because there was no shortage of hurricanes up there while I was there, including some big ones. Isabel in 2003, which is a really sort of landmark storm there in eastern North Carolina. Yeah, got my work out on all of those.
Yeah, it seems like the way North Carolina juts out, it really kind of scoops up those hurricanes as they pass by.
Yeah, we joke down here that all the hurricanes that we pray away from Myrtle Beach end up hitting North Carolina and the Outer Banks. So, yeah, I covered my fair share up there. Sticking out in the ocean like that. There was a lot. It was just about one or two almost every year that I was there that I was covering.
So after you finish your job up in Greenville, you moved to Myrtle Beach. What was it like getting your chief position, and what's it been like in the years since then?
It was interesting. I actually wasn't hired here as chief. I came down here actually to do weekend weather. I couldn't really move anywhere at my previous station. There wasn't really any room for advancement, so I ended up coming here doing weekends, and that quickly, within about 2 years, transitioned to going into the evening newscast Monday through Friday, which then quickly turned into chief and running on I think 14 years as chief here, and absolutely love it. I grew up vacationing in Myrtle Beach. Honestly, I thought I was going to spend maybe 2 or 3 years here and then maybe go somewhere else to a different place. But I've just fallen in love with Myrtle Beach, fallen in love with this station. We're sort of a new station. We didn't even go on the air until 2008. And I was one of the first to go on the air with the station back then, and just kind of fallen in love with it, put down roots, made Myrtle Beach a home. And it's great. It's a great place to live.
I think that's one of the coolest things about this business is that you can either, jump around, market jump, or you can find someone that loves you, you love it, it's a good fit, and you just kind of stay for a while.
Yeah, I've often joked, I've gotten really lucky. I was born and raised in the Carolinas. I've spent my entire career in the Carolinas. And I was talking about WITN up there in Greenville, North Carolina. They were located on Highway 17, and the current studio that I'm in right now is located on Highway 17. So I've literally spent my entire TV career lucky enough here in the Carolinas and right on 17. And I wouldn't trade it. I'm not going anywhere. As long as they'll keep me, I'm going to stick around here.
Yeah, it's funny how it's all connected one way or the other.
Yeah, right. It is. It is.
Now, having done this for more than a decade, what has changed and how do you see it continuing to change from day to day with either the on TV stuff and the digital side and that kind of switch to more of a digital landscape?
The digital, especially in the past 5 years, would definitely be the biggest. I'm sure you guys are the same, but it's digital first. That's how we live. It used to be, when I started in this business, there were no apps, there was no Facebook, there was no X. You kind of looking back, it was kind of easy. You had a 6 o'clock news in most cases, and maybe an 11 o'clock news, and that was kind of it. If there was severe weather in between, yeah, you'd be at the station, but you'd go on the air if you needed to. Well, now it's app updates, it's updates on all the social media platforms. And the digital platform, sending out updates on the app, making sure all those things are done. And a lot of times now it's shifting to sort of the evening news aspect of it. That's kind of lower on the totem pole. Yeah, we're still doing it. We're still putting everything into it. But it's everything that happens outside of that, you know, hour to 2 hour newscast in the afternoon and evenings that's just as important now. People are on the go. They want to check their app. They want to see an accurate forecast and they want to know what's coming and got to keep up with it.
Yeah, they don't always have the time to sit down and watch it on TV, but somehow they're going to find you either Facebook or a live stream or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and we, obviously, social media is big. I love it. It's also kind of a challenge sometimes, just trying to keep up with that, especially when you're dealing with something big. You're on air during a newscast. You're trying to get your app updated. You're trying to put a post on Facebook and a post on X and Instagram and TikTok or whatever else you may have. It does get to be a lot sometimes, but that's also kind of what we all love about the business. I'm sure it's just the excitement of it. And, the adrenaline gets pumping when the weather gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's always fun to have to multitask at the same time. You're talking about something, you're also doing something over here. You need more than just two hands.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's always it's always a bunch of hands going in a whole bunch of different directions.
And pretty recently, you had that major wildfire down there in Horry County. As far as that goes, you were out there in the field covering it. Do you normally go out and do stuff like that, or was this kind of like a all hands on deck kind of thing?
It was almost an accident. I
Yeah.
was out and about on Saturday. To be honest with you, I was actually at happy hour. It was on a Saturday, March 1st. And, we had the red flag warnings in effect. We knew it was kind of a potential for a big fire day. And I was sitting, having lunch, and started getting a couple of tweets, a couple of messages about, hey, there's some smoke over by Carolina Forest. Looks like there's a fire. So I kind of packed up, actually had my friends in the car with me. I was like, let's just go right over here and check real quick. And as we got closer, could see the smoke plume really starting to grow and kind of weaved our way back into some neighborhoods. And by the time I got there, people were just literally running out with what they had in their hands because they were, evacuating so quick because of this fire. And yeah, so I ended up, doing some live reports and going on Facebook Live and streaming some of those live updates out there. Totally hadn't planned on it, but that's the nature of this business. You're in the right spot, you got to do what you got to do. So I was out there for a couple of hours and then ended up coming in and working in the studio the rest of that night into the next day on Sunday. We had that fire really flare up overnight, and that's when it threatened a lot of houses and we had a lot more evacuation. So it was it was pretty scary go of it there for a couple of days.
And I think there weren't any houses actually destroyed, right?
Yeah, that's the miraculous thing
Yeah,
about
that's
that
amazing.
fire. Yeah, we did not lose a single structure from that fire. It got close enough that there were quite a few houses that had like the siding that melted off the back, or the porch sort of melted under the heat of being so close to the fire, but never any complete loss, which is just amazing, and certainly a lot different than the big fire we had back in 2009. That was one of the first big events that I covered here, was the big wildfire, basically in that same area. That one ended up burning 30,000 acres, and we lost about 80 houses from that one. So this one was a lot different, but it was still kind of touch and go and scary there for a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about wildfires like that, the ones that hopefully don't hit anything, is the fact that you can see the smoke plumes on radar. You can kind of track it that way, see where the wind's blowing it, and just kind of monitor it from the air.
Yeah, it is really cool to see that. And that's actually how we kind of kept up with that fire for a while. Even a few weeks after the fire was sort of contained, you would still get flare ups, and it would usually be on radar where we would see the first flare up. And sure enough, we'd check, and there'd be a big smoke plume, or, fire trucks were on their way back out there to kind of put out a hot spot. But yeah, that radar technology and seeing that smoke plume and where exactly they're going and how vibrant and intense it is pretty cool.
Yeah, and changing gears a bit, obviously a lot of your life revolves around weather and things like that, but you're also a big time painter, very talented one at that. How did
Thank
you
you.
get started doing that? And were you always good at it, or was it kind of a learned skill over time?
I just kind of picked it up. I've had no real formal training outside of a couple of art classes, in high school. I've always enjoyed just sort of drawing and sketching and painting. And I'll sort of go through these phases where I'll sort of really get into it for a couple of weeks. That was, years ago when I was a lot younger. And then I just kind of quit for a while. Life gets busy and you just sort of run out of time. And about a year ago, I just like, I need to pick this up again and use it as kind of a stress relief. And now I'm just kind of really getting obsessed with it again. And I feel like I'm sort of reaching my stride. Been sort of keeping up with some of the newest techniques and pushing myself to do some different things with painting. And it's been really fun. And it's honestly, I do it more for stress relief than anything. There's nothing like a Sunday afternoon, just kind of relaxing and throwing some paint on the canvas. I don't know, it's relaxing to me. And, I've sold a couple, so it's a fun little side business.
Do you usually try to paint things that you've seen or around you, or just kind of anything that strikes your mind?
Yeah, usually it's sort of what's around me. So a lot of my paintings are kind of beachy or sort of the marsh, just kind of the general look here of the Eastern Carolinas. I took a trip to Canada back in February and got a couple of paintings out of that. Just sort of snowy landscapes, which not something we see a lot of around here, but it's always fun to paint those.
All right, so we'll kind of wrap this up talking about the future for you. You kind of alluded to it a bit about the fact that you plan to stay there hopefully for years and years to come. What do you hope that continues to be the case with you and your station and just your career moving forward?
Um, Number one, that they'll keep me here. That's the biggest
That's the
one.
important one, yeah.
Yeah, that's the important one. I'm not planning on going anywhere. I hope they're not planning on me going anywhere. I love my team here. We've got a great team. People tend to move here, kind of like I did. I think with the idea that this will be a cool place to work for a couple of years and then I'll go on. But they ended up, buying a house and settling down and getting married. So a lot of the members of the weather team here have been here for, a really long time. So that's always good. Kind of keep that in place and just keep up with the changes. Keeping up with the changes and keeping up with Myrtle Beach. We're consistently one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and this is a changing place. It's nothing like what it was when I started here 17 years ago. It's nothing like what it was when I came here, on vacation in high school. But it's fascinating to see how it's growing and just kind of being a part of it and being able to witness it and keeping up with it and gaining new viewers. All these people are coming down and moving in here and they're looking for somewhere to check out the forecast and get the news. And here I am.
I think that's one of the coolest things about being a very fast growing area is that we can get new viewers, people that maybe haven't watched the weather before, just kind of try to pull them in and talk about what's going to happen that day and just kind of keep them safe anytime a hurricane or something hits.
Yeah, and that's kind of our philosophy. That's how you win viewers. They're watching on a sunny and 75 day, but they're not really going to remember that. They're going to remember that day that the severe storms hit. They're going to remember that snowstorm. They're going to remember that hurricane. And if you can get them on that first click, they'll be lifetime viewers for you. And that's how we try to reel them in.
I agree. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time again and hope you have a good day.
Thank you. It's been fun. Thanks, Matt.
Big thanks to Jamie Arnold for taking the time to talk to me. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, and subscribe for more future content just like this.